All right, everyone. We have more of the DeCarlos Brown Jr. saga. Of course, he's the one that randomly on the light train decided to stab Zarutska, Irina Zarutska, to death. And of course, he's being tried for murder. And some people preface to this. This is a nuanced video, so don't jump down my throat until I explain my whole point. Of course, this is condemnable. Should he be in prison for life? Yeah, of course he should. However, some people are complaining that Judge Roy Wiggins, presiding over the case, has sent him off to the funny farm for a mental evaluation. Here's my thoughts. This is legally inescapable. The judge does not have the unilateral capability to deny a motion which is codified into law anyway. If the defendant asks for, or their counsel rather, in this case, because he is nuts, I will agree with that. He's nuts as well as a murderer. I think prison is the proper place for him. Here's the thing. Let's say that the judge were inexplicably to deny the motion despite it being codified into law. If he's found guilty thereafter, you're going to have an automatic appeal, and it'd probably attract the attention of human rights and civil rights groups, which means money would pile in for the defense. It probably at a higher court, it might get overturned. He might end up free if he doesn't get evaluated. Now, since he's going to be evaluated, it's already been so ordered. I think he's in the nut ward now. He's in the mental institute. I love that one prank call, by the way, by the Village Idiot. Village Idiot. I can't remember which one the title was, but he's constantly telling people, "Did you take your Prozac? Did you take your meds today? We'll get you in the mental institute," and stuff like that. I don't know why, but the way he says it just is funny on that soundboard anyway. Not really a funny subject, but he's on the funny farm, so yeah, I guess he's laughing and smearing his poo on the wall. Probably try to act crazy while he's there. Assuming that he's sane, he's going to try to act like he's nuts. Probably attack some other inmates, maybe, again, poo smear, piss on people, stuff like that, and he'll be laughing the entire time and just cutting loose. Some people were complaining. First, they made a mistake in thinking that he was simply declared insane. He's not going to prison. That's not what's happening here. This is a 60-day psych evaluation under the law. The defense has the right to have that happen. So there's really nothing that the judge could do. People were complaining about him. There are some issues there, maybe, but his hands are tied anyway, so there's nothing he can do about it. Let's say he's found competent. Well, then, back to the detention facility you go, and he will be found guilty because it's pretty much beyond speculation that he just randomly murdered this woman. So the evidence is there. I mean, the prosecution can just say, look, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've probably all seen this video anyway. I mean, who else is doing the stabbing here other than Mr. DeCarlos here? So he's going to get the book thrown at him. I wouldn't expect him to get a very light sentence in this particular case because of the wanton manner of the crime. Let's say he's found incompetent to stand trial. Well, then he goes back to the funny farm. And I've spoken with people who have been in both prison and on the funny farm. And it is pretty widely agreed that it's worse to be on the funny farm. Like the level of rights that you enjoy, the basic rights as a prisoner, because you're sane and therefore, the law says, okay, well, if you're a reasonable person, then we have to give reasonable accommodation to your needs. You don't get that in the nut ward. You don't get that because you're nuts. So if you complain about something, it's taken less seriously because you're insane. And I mean, he is insane, criminally so, but at the same time, I do believe prison would be a better place. But if you really wanted to screw him, you'd find him mentally incompetent. And some people pointed out, well, yeah, but what if what if the physicians there decide he's been treated, he can leave? I do not believe that is in fact the way that it works. You would still end up probably with him being on very strict terms if he ever was released, and it would be many, many years down the road, and I doubt that that would happen. I doubt he'd gain release. Because if he truly is crazy, if he's capable of fooling a bunch of physicians into thinking he's nuts, then he's going to have to go all in. He's going to have to keep up that shtick. Maybe he'll find that he likes the nut ward better, which is probably unlikely. I think he'd be begging for prison. No, no, doctor, I lied. I'm cured. Well, sorry, you're my patient now, and you're staying here. I do not believe that he will ever see the outside world again. I do not believe that that will happen. If anything, if he goes to the nut ward and acts out, he might get shanked. If he goes to prison, the other prisoners might very well take care of her. I mean, take care of him. Well, you don't want to assume anyone's pronouns these days, because he killed a young lady for absolutely no reason. That's generally frowned upon in, prison yards and things like that. It kind of depends on the crime that you committed, how you're treated when you're in jail or prison, by the way. There's a pecking order. Pedophiles are down at the bottom, rapists barely above that, cop killers, they'd be about twain. And then things like this, they'd be somewhere just above that, basically. These people don't do well in jail, nor in mental wards. And it could be, by the way, could be that he legit is nuts. Had no clue he was dissociating. He had no clue what was even going on at the time. This is a possibility, although it doesn't seem likely considering his utterances directly thereafter. Hey, I got the white girl. Well, I mean, then race could play part in the motive. By the way, wouldn't that be an aggravated feature? Wouldn't the hate crime apply because of his statements after the stabbing? Well, I mean, if assuming that he's found competent, goes back to regular trial, I would think that they would pile a hate crime charge on him. It would make sense. Seems like it was possibly racially motivated. Well, I killed that white bitch. Well, I mean, yeah, great. If a white dude came up behind a black girl on the light tram and stabbed her and then said, "Well, I got that black bitch," there would be a hate crime charge in 10 seconds. The blood wouldn't be dry before that charge was made. So there is a little bit of a differentiation here, but as far as the nut ward thing goes, he's only there for an evaluation, then he goes straight back to jail and awaits further trial. Now, it'll be endlessly appealed and drag on for probably years anyway, because that's how slow, mastodonic the system actually is. It is very, very slow. So it's going to be a while before we see any results. At the very least, for 60 days, we're not going to get jack shit. Then we'll get, I guess a preliminary evaluation, and they'll proceed from there. That's about all. Peace out.